Hello. In this video we'll be looking at the first reading exercise in G&K Lesson. That's lesson 1, reading 1 at page 1 of the printed textbook. I recommend that you all have, the full textual analysis that I've done. This is the one that I've called up on screen now. I'll mention before we start the substance of it that you'll see how it's laid out. First of all, just the bare text, and then so to speak, a light touch word-by-word analysis. And then I've dealt in greater detail with certain words. Please bear well in mind, wherever you see in the text box at the bottom a double colon, space, and then the word, this indicates that there's an entry I've made for that word in what I've called my explanatory glossary, which is available to you all, and if not, just ask and I'll send it to you. You should all have it, everyone who's seeing this. I will call it up now, explanatory glossary. So what I recommend that you do, say you want to look up the word sarana, or rather see the additional explanation of sarana. So my recommended way of finding it is just, is just copying the word. I'm highlighting and control copy. Now call up, here we are. What's another word I had there? Call up the explanatory glossary, and then the navigation, which is the search. Now paste that word into search. Remember, always it's the double colon, space, and then the word, and that will take you straight to where the word appears in the explanatory glossary. Remember, if you don't put the double colon, space, it will take you to anywhere in the entire glossary that string appears. To go to my specific treatment of that word, you have to do the double colon and space. This use of double colon, space, and then word to do a head word search, I've borrowed from the Pali Text Society's dictionary. That's the online version of the 2015 edition of the PTS dictionary. So I say the purpose of that is that takes you straight to the head word rather than anywhere in the entire corpus of the dictionary where that string exists. So in these video clips that I'm preparing in advance, these YouTube video clips, I won't go through all of the, I won't go through all of these words in detail. I'm proposing to go through them in detail during the live lessons on Zoom. Those of you who want to go into these words in detail in the course of listening to these YouTube lessons, then of course feel free to do so, and this is how to do it. So back to the text now. So I will read it through and then explain. A lot of these texts that we see here, and particularly this first one that we all know very well, tend to be chanted. What I'm going to do is to read them as ordinary prose, because this is primarily a linguistic exercise rather than a chanting exercise, apart from the fact that I regret I'm not terribly good at chanting. I'm on much firmer ground with linguistic analysis. So here we go. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami. Now in the grammar part of this lesson, some of you will already have seen my YouTube lesson on the grammar, where I go through the grammar section starting on page 4, lesson 1 starting on page 4, and I'm referring now here in particular to the verbs dealt with on page 7. This gacchami, it's slightly unfortunate that the very first verb you encounter in these lessons happens to be slightly irregular. The root, remember, when I use the square root sign, it's generally done among linguists. It's the indication that what follows is just the root. I emphasize here, everyone should, before hearing these lessons, have seen the roots and stems video that I have done. So root gum, we would normally expect it to make the meaning to go. We would normally expect it to be gamami. That would be regular. So we would normally expect it to be this, gamami. I'll explain another convention used by linguists, particularly in writing grammars and that kind of thing. That is the use of the asterisk. When I put an asterisk here, that means that the form doesn't actually exist, or it's a deliberately wrong form, and I'm just putting it to show what it would have been if it were regular. So if it were regular, it would be gamami, but it's not. The m changes to a ch, double ch, and that is why we see gacchami. And as for the rest, it conjugates perfectly regularly, subject to only this m to ch change. So gacchami, gacchasi, gacchati, and in the plural gacchama, gacchata, gacchanti. So buddhang gacchami, I go to the Buddha. In the grammar there's a note on the accusative of motion or accusative of destination. So it means I go to the Buddha. Now, saranang, most commonly translated as refuge, but there is more to it than that. It has more the idea of protection and sheltering, but it can also be interpreted in the sense of one's armor, one's protection for going into battle, rather than running away from it. This word turns up in different forms, for example, in the Germanic languages. This saranam, it's sharana in Sanskrit. It turns up as Schirm in German, as in a Regenschirm, which is an umbrella, a Schirm against the rain. So a Regenschirm isn't something that enables you to run away from the rain. On the contrary, it's something that enables you to go out in the rain without getting wet. So, although I'm not saying that the translation refuge is wrong, I am saying that it can be slightly misleading if it's interpreted as refuge in the sense of being a refugee, of running away from something. It's not quite like that. It gives you protection while you're in the thick of the fight. There are so many cases in the scriptures where we have the imagery of battles. You know, the battle is with the defilements. And a man might conquer 1,000 foes, but mightier is he who conquers himself. So this battle imagery occurs throughout the literature, in Pali and in Sanskrit Buddhist literature. So bear in mind this dual meaning here. It can be understood as meaning a refuge, that you can run away to a place of safety, but it also means that which protects you as you go into battle. This is a double accusative here. In in English we translate as I go to the Buddha for protection / refuge / safety, or I go to the Buddha as protection. It's just a double accusative. I go protection, I go, sorry, Buddha protection, I go, as I go for protection to the Buddha. And then equally, Dhammang Saranang Gacchami and Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. Many of you will have seen this word Sangha written in an alternative way. Sangha is one correct way of writing it, and the other correct way of writing it is Sangha. That's with a dot over the N, which is a ng sound, as in anga, meaning a component part or a limb. The Atangiko Maggo is the eightfold path, literally the 8-limb or 8-member path, a path having 8 component parts. Both are equally correct. In the grammar section, I say sandhi, for example, can be written as sandhi with the subdotted n, or written, which is more common, I think, with an n sandhi. We go on to the second part of it, Dutiyampi, and then the rest is all the same. Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. Dutiya in Pali means second, as in number 2. It's an adjective. Here, as very frequently, you can make an adverb by using just the neuter form, neuter accusative form, dutiyam, and if you use that on its own, it becomes an adverb meaning secondly, or a second time. So dutiyang buddhang saranang gacchami, a second time I go to the Buddha for refuge. The force of the pi here, in Sanskrit it's api, in Pali it's either pi or api. It tends to be api when it stands at the beginning of a word group, and pi when it is eclitic, that is, it's tacked onto the end of a word. So dutiyampi, it has rather the same force as English, yet a second time. I go to the Buddha, yet a second time I go to the Buddha. So, dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. In Sanskrit it is dvitiya. It's from the, if you see in the note that I've done underneath, here we are. Pali, the Sanskrit stem form of the word two is dva. Pali stem form is dvi. This is reflected in the Latin duo and the German zwei, in English two, and the Scandinavian and Swedish två. And as I say, with the adjectival form duitia. Duitia, it's deuteros in Greek, zevteros, pronounced in modern Greek as in Deuteronomy, which is the second law, the second book of the law in the Bible. So dutiyampi. Now we come to the third component of it. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. The same applies. The tatiya, Sanskrit tritiya, which you can see is cognate with our English word third. So that the tri is the same as our English word three, and that by standard phonetic mutation that becomes a ti in Pali, and the Sanskrit adjective tritiya, third, becomes tatiya in Pali. So just as dutiya becomes dutiyampi, so tatiya becomes tatiyampi, yet a third time. So that accounts for tatiyampi. So tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, yet a third time I go to the Buddha for protection / refuge. I'll give you a note here, an oral note on the pronunciation of this final subdotted M. On its own, in Sanskrit, it would be just an or im ending, pronounced as a normal M, as in English. I'm fairly convinced, we don't have hard evidence for it, but I'm fairly convinced that the likely pronunciation of it at the time that the Buddha was speaking was the same as in Sanskrit. So it would be pronounced dutiyam, tatiyam. It has come to be pronounced by the Thais and the Sinhalese, and I think by the Burmese. I don't know much about that, but certainly by the Thais and the Sinhalese speakers, the Sri Lankans, as an ng sound, are they not? So to say, on its own, buddhang, saranang, at the time of the Buddha, and certainly it probably was pronounced, and in Sanskrit we know that it is pronounced as a buddham and a saranam. Now, what happens to that sound when another word follows? So at the end of a word group on its own, for Pali, pronounce it as an ang. When another word follows, its default mode is that it will remain ang. However, the sound will alter to suit the point of articulation, as where the tongue and the mouth is placed. There are organs of articulation are at the time it comes out. So here, tatiyampi. It's not tatiyangpi, but tatiyampi, because the sound, the nasal before a labial here, the p, wants to join it and become a labial as well. So we say tatiyampi. Where the following word is a sibilant, like a s, then it will be pronounced as a ng. Here, the following word begins with a g. So the default mode is saranang, but here it remains a ng because that glides into the following sound. It's natural to say saranang gacchami. We can see that phenomenon occurring in English. For example, so I've been writing something on my iPad without letting you see it. Sorry. Sorry, I regularly do that in the live classes, and people are constantly shouting at me to say, "James, are you writing?" And I am writing, but I've forgotten to show my iPad. So this is what I was showing earlier, gam, and then this asterisk here. So this gamami form that doesn't exist, it's gacchami, and the alternative ways of writing sangha, both correct, and alternative ways of writing sandhi. That was something that got explained in the grammar section. Yeah, I was just about to say before I realized I'd forgotten to show the iPad that we see the phenomenon of a change from a n to a l, for example, in the English word. Let's look at the English word sin, the n sin. If we add a k to it, then the sound of the n automatically shifts to a ng. So sink. We automatically do that as native English speakers. We don't change the consonant, we write it the same, but if we were writing that in Pali or Sanskrit, we'd write this n above it to show that it is a ng sound. go back to where we were. So I'll just read this through once more, this last bit. So tatyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, tatyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, tatyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Now, I have not in this section given an explanation of that very profound and polysemic and having many meanings word dhamma, from the Sanskrit dharma. I will do so in the live Zoom classes, but you can look it up here, as many of the words that, as you'll see as we go along, where I've marked with this double colon space than the word. So that is it for reading 1.